life living and making a living can sometimes wear us out, grind us down, and dull our senses. So for a keen mind and a sharp contributive edge that can make it all easier and better and more productive, let's take some time to sharpen our axe. Stay with us right now for Life Talk.
Hello, I'm Gina Fitt, and you've either surfed to or purposely selected Life Talk with Vern Moses. Welcome to another in our series of ongoing verbal essays brought to you in this television format. It's a pleasure for us to have you with us today. Vern, it's great to be back again for another show. I'd like to introduce to our guest, Stephen Mills. Stephen, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Hi, Gina. Good to be here with you.
And Vern, I'm going to let you run with it this time.
He's going to be a habit, isn't he? No, being conscious of some things this last week or two, I know that Stephen was out and around in the country representing Command Group in our favor, talking to companies and what have you, and I know he was encountering certain experiences. I guess you'd say he was interviewing in sort, and I knew that you were out investigating job possibilities because of a dramatic change in your life. And I thought it'd be interesting to kind of talk about interviewers, interviewing, and some of the experiences that you've had, so that if someone is eavesdropping perhaps and they're about to interview, they'll know what to expect, or if they're interviewers, to know how we perceive them. You know, that wouldn't hurt, you know, and then they can kind of objectively look in and say, ooh, I think that might apply to me. Am I doing that? Or be proud that they're not. And I guess we should start with Gina. Is there any particular things that you've run into that less than professional or astoundingly competent?
Well, I appreciate that, Vernon. We were talking briefly before the show about some of the challenges we face as candidates and interviewers for a variety of different positions. It could be you're looking for a job and you're interviewing with a prospective employer. It could be that you're trying to promote a product or service in the position of a salesperson to a potential buyer. It could be that you're on a first date and you're trying to promote to each other all your good qualities. And you said, well, what was your experience? How did you find that it was for you? Were you afraid? Were you nervous? Did you have apprehension? And how was it for some of the people you talked to? Did you notice from them fear, apprehension, inappropriate behavior? And you also mentioned in conclusion that anytime people are inappropriate, it's because they are unprepared. And I have to tell you, that is the key. That is the key to your confidence, your ability to be relaxed, your ability to be professional, and to handle yourself in a manner that leaves a good impression for both sides, and also allows you to get across your points effectively, regardless of whether you're interviewing prospective romance or prospective, sales or prospective employee. And I think I would just like to encourage people to take the time to prepare. If you're out looking for a job, there are some wonderful books available. Read some books. Make sure that your resume is appropriate. You'll get a lot of ideas. How to interview, what questions are most commonly asked, how you should dress, they've done research. What kinds of clothing that you may think is perfectly suitable gives the wrong impression, regardless of the job you're interviewing for. How do you prepare for each potential interview to account for the differences and the variances between the styles of the company, the styles of the interviewee, and maybe the different requirements of the position you're applying for? If you're going to be going out on a date, again, you need to prepare. Have in mind what it is you want to find out about that person that night or that afternoon. What are you looking for a future friendship? What are your goals? What are your priorities? And have an idea of what your own mind is.
And know that it's okay to say no.
And that it's okay to say no.
Sure.
And it's okay to have an opinion, whether you're the man or the woman, or but to be able to do so diplomatically. And I always like this statement, and this might be way off base, but if you want to have the one, you got to be the one. And I think that's if you want to have the right job, you got to be the right employee. If you want to have the right partner, you got to be the right partner. If you want to make a sale, You've got to be the right product, the right service, the right price, the right time. And so that means becoming prepared, doing your research.
I gather that you were, and I'm confident that you were prepared in your ventures. What were you encountering? Were the people that you were...
And that's a good question, because I encountered a wide variety of interviewers. Some people who enjoyed very much the opportunity to sit down and make my acquaintance, find out a little bit about me. They knew exactly what they were looking for. They asked the right questions, direct, honest, somewhat challenging, but fair, and they appreciated the answers. They listened appropriately. Other people who do this for a living, they are human resource directors, or they are employment agency professionals who were inappropriate. Why? That was an odd question for me, because they were defensive, they were threatening, they were posturing, there was a power struggle going on, and I hadn't even met them yet. It was just over the telephone kind of an interview. And then others who were perfectly wonderful.
How do they exhibit that over the telephone? In other words, by over-screening or just trying to put you in your place on the phone? How did that...
A little bit of that, a little bit of that. Well, you know, we don't do this, and we don't do this, and we don't do this, and you know that this doesn't look good, and I don't know why this happened, and without understanding or knowing maybe what my background is, what it was I was looking for, you know, not having a clear picture of what was possible. So...
Another guest here. Yeah. They, you said challenging questions. Do you recall one of the more challenging questions you might have been asked? It's always fascinating.
Well, I enjoy challenging questions. And a lot of times a challenging question would be like a story problem. If you were in this circumstance, what would you do? And you don't know what it is they're looking for.
Right.
And so there's not a, quote, right answer, although there may be something that particular person values more than anything else.
Or terminology sometimes.
Sometimes it's just terminology.
Yeah.
So it's important from the time you enter the interview that you're listening to what they're saying and how they're saying it, that you're trying to pick up on what might be important to them, get a sense of their character so that you can respond appropriately. And that helps if you have, again, gone to the library, done some research on the company, maybe made a phone call or two to other people at the company where you're interviewing to find out what the requirements of the job are, what challenges they've had recently, why they might be looking for someone, what their goals and objectives are for this position. Any information you come with will help you to be more appropriate in your responses. And you know, a lot of times, example, if you're interviewing, you send out 200 resumes and you wait for the job offers to come in. And they call you and you're like, now what company were you with? What do you do? I'm sorry, what was your name? And what kind of an impression does that make? So you have to do
I think too many
research.
people are dependent upon resumes. They just send them out, and wonder why no one wants them. And but I presume you were more assertive than that. You were picking companies that you wanted to possibly go to work for.
Well, that's the whole other side of the coin. Are you going to, and that has to do with being proactive or reactive. Are you going to wait for the first offer that comes along, whether it's something you want or not, or are you going to look for what it is you want to do with your life? Are you going to become established in an industry or profession that suits your particular ambitions, financial requirements, aptitudes, abilities, talents, interests, and hang on, hold out, and fight for what it is you want. And understand that if you fight for it appropriately, by doing your research, by doing your studying, and by being prepared, that it automatically increases your odds, puts you up in the 5%. So.
Now, it's been nearly 2 weeks that you've been doing this.
Yeah.
Right. How many thank you notes have you sent out for their time and consideration?
For everyone.
Yeah. Good.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's really
it's
important.
Amazing how many people don't do that.
Well, you know, when you get a stack of 200 or 300 or 400 resumes for a position that's available, and you talk to someone on the phone, and maybe have an interview with them in person, and maybe you're interviewing 5, 10, 20 people, you need to be reminded of who you've met with, why they stand out, refresh in their mind who you are, what it is you have to offer, and also establish that yes, you are someone who has good manners. You're someone who cares, someone who's fighting for this position because it's important to you, and then you'll continue to be that kind of an employee once you're hired. You'll fight for the things that are in the company's best interest.
Are there any key words that you employ in an interview that you're conscious of always using? Any? I know where I'm going with this, but I mean, are you conscious of having any key phrases or issues that you always convey to these people?
I think integrity and honesty are important, especially when you're in a sales profession. I know I've had a couple of interviewers tell me that they picked up on my use of that phrasing, and that was a hot button for them. That was important to them. Service, satisfaction for the customer, those are important issues.
If I can too, make an issue at this point for the consumer out here in the world to realize that the salespeople they encounter are probably the conscience of their companies. A lot of people don't acknowledge that. They think the salespeople are the rascals, and the salespeople are the consciences, I find. In other words, integrity and honesty and service are paramount in your mind if you're going to represent a product or a service. And I think people should be reminded of that always, rather than you know, kind of making these generalizations that you got to watch out for the salesman rather than watch out for them. You know, it's kind of a fascinating thing. Yeah.
Well, certainly nothing would happen. No products would be moved, no services would be available. No money would be available for the paychecks of everyone else in the company
Sales aren't made.
if the sales aren't made. And I think as salespeople, we need to realize how valuable and important our contribution is to that company, and what a responsibility we have to be the epitome of honesty and integrity, to value excellent service and customer satisfaction. And I think that's absolutely essential in an industry where you're building relationships with specific accounts, and you're having a long-term relationship with them. And perhaps there's more latitude for dishonesty or things that are a little more frustrating for the consumer if you're making a one-time sale and you're moving on to the next guy and who can I snooker next. Maybe there is some of that, but it's certainly, they don't last, even if it is a one-time sale, because their reputation builds.
I do want to, though, get in it from the other perspective, and that is, what can you say that might assist the interviewers that you've encountered? Things they did well, things they didn't do well. I mean, from that perspective, too. What did you encounter that you wish they could have understood to do something different? What do you have in that arena?
Well, I think it's, again, I think it's very important for the interviewer to come to the interview prepared. They need to have clearly identified in their minds and on paper what qualities they require from the candidate who they offer the position to. They need to be personality qualities, list those.
You're finding a lot of them aren't?
Yeah.
That's what we're saying.
Right. They need to have skills and list them. And these are absolutes and these are optional. Maybe, you know, if they have these absolutes and some of these, that's a good balance. And that will do, because you're not going to get everything you want with anybody, a job or an employee, but to find the best. And a lot of it has to do with their desire to work hard, their willingness to adopt the company values and standards and do what it takes to be successful. Of course, they're looking for those things. Then, so they need to come to the interview prepared as well, to ask the right questions, to look for the appropriate information from the interviewee. I also think that it helps very much, and I only had one person do this, but to say, this is where I'm going with the interview. First, I'm going to ask you about this area. You know, I'm going to find out a little bit about this. Then we're going to talk a little bit about this. Then we're going to talk a little bit about this. So I knew how much I had left, what I'd done, where I was going, and that took a weight off of my shoulders, just to have an idea of what the outline for the meeting was going to be, instead of wondering what they're going to throw at me next. And I think it's important for the interviewer to understand that this person is coming with, in a sense, their future is in your hands, or one of their potential futures is in your hands. And as an interviewer, you have a very strong responsibility and obligation to be fair with the person, to find out the truth about the person, and to give them ample opportunity to state their case, to show their talents, and to share with you what their goals and desires and abilities are. And oftentimes people will have extreme interview anxiety. Some of us are hams and we enjoy performing on spot, and we don't mind at all, and we consider it quite the game. Other people, no matter how wonderful and polished and professional they are, just clam up when they get into an interview, and they can't breathe and they can't swallow, and their hands are, you know, like rivers. And
you've been on the other side then. You've done the interviewing in the past.
Yeah, I have done interviewing in the past, and I think anything you can do to put them at ease, to let them know that you appreciate them
What's the
taking
worst
time out of their
experience
days
you've
to
had?
come.
Well, this is where I'm trying to get balance here. You've had some good ones, but what were some of the worst experiences you had?
Worst experiences that I've had?
Yeah. This is so that we can caution people not to do this.
Oh, not to do this? Well, I don't think there's any value in trying to manipulate someone, to try to trip them up by asking questions to see if you can lead them down a path and make them say the wrong thing or look like a fool, or to play mental games. That doesn't accomplish anything. They're already nervous enough.
You had some of that, in other words.
I've seen that occur, yeah. Or to be threatening or condescending or overly harsh. Doesn't accomplish anything. I think that people generally act at the level we expect them to. So if we expect them to be relaxed, confident, open, and that they know that we appreciate them taking the time to come in, to get all dressed up, to put their last $5 in their car in gas to make it to the interview, and realize that they're maybe struggling, and give them the respect they deserve, then they will be able to share their best side with you and give you an idea of what's possible.
Now, Stephen, Gina was representing herself.
Yes.
Okay, and you were representing Command Productions, myself, and what have you. What were you encountering? And this is in Los Angeles, wasn't it? Or,
yes.
Yeah.
Greater Los Angeles area, the metro area. I noticed, several things. One, in telephone interviewing, or prospecting, I guess you might say, the same sorts of things are a grand lack or an uncertainty about how to conduct ourselves to let someone who obviously has something unique, information, special product, service that could benefit that company, to let them in appropriately. Now, Los Angeles is a place that's rampant with lots of activity and people everywhere, and they have their share of good news, bad news occurring daily. And what I encountered that might be reflective of all of their difficult news or bad news is constant fear. Protectiveness such that you can hardly walk into a company and ask to be introduced to someone in the training or human resources or someone in the decision-making capacities within the company and establish an appointment to visit with them, where you literally present yourself and your presentation, your costume or clothing, to that company on the same time frame that you're setting an appointment to see them later. And what I'm wondering is how we as a culture will deal with that lack of trust so that we can literally, as Gina says, get exposed to new products, services that are definitely beneficial to us to do whatever we do as a company or an agency or a nonprofit organization. And I visited several of each in the Los Angeles area and encountered over and over again layers that were designed to specifically keep people out of contact, and no names given out whatsoever, and it's almost asking a person to have to be a personal acquaintance of someone in the company before you have any way of addressing a piece of mail or a phone call to someone specifically. Very difficult for a professional to reach in to a company, an agency, or a nonprofit and represent something that would enhance them without knowing someone already personally. So what is this, a life of the inside crowd? Is it a sales event where we're requiring each other to be already acquaintances? And the only people and services and products that we invite into our companies and agencies are going to be those that are represented by our friends and neighbors? or the people with whom we socialize. Very dangerous for us to be so screening that we cannot encounter competent people on a daily basis who will safely bring products and services to us. So I encountered a great deal of fear.
There's an attitude out there about, well, if it was any good, I've already heard about it. I don't have the time, you know, this type of thing. I'm reminded, you ever see that cartoon of the, I think it was a Civil War setting, and the general was about ready to send his troops out into the field with bayonets and, you know, guns, and he was saying to his aide, no, I don't have any time to talk to these salesmen right now. I got a war to fight. And it happened to be that the salesman, just outside the tent, had a Gatling gun. You've got to change the tide of the whole thing, but he wasn't, you know, prepared to talk to anybody. He didn't have time.
Yeah, right.
And we know that we have solutions for these people who say, well, we got to reduce stress, we got to increase communications, we got to do this, we got to do that. And you say, well, we really ought to talk about this for a while. I say, no, I'm not. I'm too busy. I'm not interested. It's really fascinating.
Yeah. And you know, I've been in the position of managing multiple responsibilities, being the one that everyone who has a product or service to sell I'm the one they have to approach to get their product and service in the door. And you know, they could be selling a Gatling gun, but they might be selling rubber bullets or water balloons.
Right.
And how much time do you have in the middle of the day to review everything, not to mention the scads of mail that comes, and you're supposed to go through all that in addition to your responsibilities. So it is a very much a problem. We have limited time, limited resources. How much money can a company allocate to screen everyone who wants to come and present some information to you that they may think is relevant, but they don't always. Again, if more people who are approaching companies or other entities to sell their products or services were prepared and knew they were only approaching because they had something of relevance to your particular company.
Even at that, though, you still run into the same security.
True.
See, that's what the frustration is.
But I think that's because they don't. They're just like stabbing in the dark.
But I think it all comes down to the very things we've been talking about at this table and on this television show for 2.5 years. And that most people out there in the world are being dictated to by their subliminal minds. They're not interested in change. You know what I mean? And anything that's different, they're going to be reactive to it. This is natural as breathing. And until we become conscious of that we do have this indolent, ignorant, subconscious mind that wants everything to stay kind of the way it is, and that it's not contributing to our future, and to quiet that and to keep an open mind, because it doesn't take long. It's kind of like the same principle that I see this happening all the time, where sales companies who are sending people out into the world to sell will have no soliciting signs on their door.
Yeah.
That's absurd. You know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, you've got to keep looking and watching lest you not find the very thing that you're looking for. And so I sympathize, but I don't condone. You know what I mean? Somehow, someone has to be open to receiving people. It doesn't take long to get rid of a salesperson. You know what I mean? It really doesn't take long to get rid of one the moment you realize that what they have is not in concert with your needs. But to not receive one, to test that, I think, is, you know, it's bordering on ignorant. Well, it is ignorant. You know what I mean? You have to find a way to do that. All the literature that comes to you, yeah, it doesn't take long. But I know we can get caught up in this. All I'm saying is that we've just got to open up. I've always received salespeople whenever I could, in our office and in our homes. And I've learned a lot from them. And a lot of them was just, you know, not a lot of wasted time, because I know how to terminate an interview. All you got to do is stand up, say thanks for coming. That's the end of the interview, you know. Anything else here that...
well, you know, that you just brought up a very interesting point, and I think it comes back to preparation again. Perhaps if we were more prepared on how to listen, make a decision, and terminate an interview appropriately without feeling like we're held hostage by these people that are trying to sell us something that we don't want, maybe it would be easier to let them in, because we know we have the tools
to get them out.
To get them out. I came, I saw, you went.
The thing is, fear, see, if they get in here, I can't get rid of them.
Right.
And so I'll keep things just the way.
I hope to bring that in, though, to any sales call or any interview for that matter, is to teach the person on the other side of the table how to let me know what their needs are so that I can actually excuse myself. You know, pardon me, this is not the appropriate time or company. Thank you for your time and courtesy.
Yeah.
One thing I do want to take a moment to celebrate you this evening, and in the past I've been just awed by, you know, NBC and CBS and whoever has their own, you know, domain website on the internet. And we're going to celebrate the fact tonight that people can kind of check in with us on our website, which is www, of course. I think that's probably already in the system. And then all they got to put in is, go ahead, Vern Moses.com. And I understand it's a good idea to put a slash. That you're more likely to get in if there is a difficulty. But we have our own domain now. And when you check in there, well, you find out about all the essays that we do and why we do them, how we do them, what our command logo means, questions and answers. Had some fun with that. I mean, that just in itself is worth the trip. And then, and a prize. If you go in there and visit with us and register that you have, there's a chance to win an entire seminar series for two. And I believe the price was up to around $400 or $500. I don't establish those; the agents do. But we're pretty excited about that. And or you can call directly here if you're in the area. 916-366-8749, and we will send you out a couple tickets to come to a concert as our guest. And if you're outside the area, you can be our guest on the 800 number, which is 661-3490. Now, understand this has all been life talk, and it's about life living and making a living, and sometimes loving. Yeah. And this is Gina Fitt, Stephen Mills, and I'm Vern
Moses.
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you, Vern.